Hey, good morning, everybody. Ken at Tortoise Capital. It is Thanksgiving weekend, November 27th, 2022. This is session 23 for lesson 22. Or no, session 24 for lesson 23, the blender. And this is the Euro session, so we'll start off with our usual brief check ins. Ernie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Had a nice Thanksgiving, and it was just my wife and I, but we really had a nice time. Uh, we had a turkey breast and from honey baked ham. So that was our Thanksgiving. It was just the two of us, and we reflected on old Thanksgiving. So it was a nice holiday for us. Thank you. Aho.
Awesome. Chun Long, how are you doing? How are you doing today, Chun Long?
Really good. Good weather. Actually, warm weather in winter. That's what it is. I hope.
Mm. Sonal, how are we doing today?
Go.
Yeah, very well, thank you. Not happy with the weather or the lack of sky, but otherwise, in spirit, good, in health, good. So, yeah, all great over here. Thank you. I hope.
Good. And Jeff, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Very good. So yeah, we had a chilled out Thanksgiving sort of over here, enjoying some time away from the markets actually. It's always a good excuse, having a couple of days off. And so yeah, it was pretty light on our part. We sort of went exploring to a different sort of part of the country on Thanksgiving itself, which was kind of cool. And yeah, it's just been sort of a nice weekend. So apart from the weather today, the rest of it was pretty good. And so we were just out, sort of dark and rainy, never really got much light today, and now it's basically sundown. So that's okay. We'll come back again tomorrow. Aho.
Excellent. Excellent. Tom Sullivan, how are we?
Um, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. All good. Yeah, it's raining here and cold. But yeah, it was a nice Thanksgiving. I seen my sister saw my nephew. He's doing some research into my father's past and World War II veteran and some of the campaigns they were in. He was in the Air Corps, so it was pretty nice. He was shot down and he's trying to find articles and looking in things of the past. It was nice reflection on how things are. So
Nice. Tom Hardison, welcome back. How are we doing?
Doing well. I had last weekend and early part of this week, 4 days with my parents and my youngest son. So it was fun to just lots of stories about my grandparents and great grandparents and my parents growing up. So that was very rich. And I returned home and well, one son who's been living with us came home from visiting friends with some COVID-like symptoms. So we didn't do much for Thanksgiving. And then on Friday, my wife had her first ski day. She has been volunteering as a mountain host and unfortunately had a spill with someone cutting in front of her and hitting her skis and injured a knee. So I may need to step out whenever she calls because she's not very mobile at the moment. But
Yeah.
will recover in time. So, aho.
Nice. Kyun, bring us home.
Yeah, busy week actually. So my son had his exams. I mean, this is exam to go to a new school, so that the parents are always the stressed up for that. But he had it on Saturday, so no Thanksgiving for me really. It's just I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but we did Interestingly, I went to the American International Church or something like that has a Thanksgiving service at St. Paul's Cathedral on Thanksgiving Day, and I got asked to go to that one. And the U.S. is it the U.S. ambassador to the UK? I can't remember her name, but was there. She gave a speech, which was quite interesting. And this morning, my wife took the car. You know, she went out with the kids and parked in the supermarket car park and got the rear window smashed. So it was all
Oh,
not as bad, I don't think, as yours can be at the time with your daughter, but it's still, you know, it's just a bit of a shock, and then you got to go and do the reports and insurance claim and all that. So that was my day up till recently. And yeah, and Canada is 1-0 up against Croatia in the World
already?
Cup.
I get
Yes,
them. I'm recording it. We watched the
Sorry.
pregame.
Sorry for the spoiler, but
No worries.
and,
I'm gonna watch
yeah.
that one. I'm gonna watch that one anyway.
Okay, cool. I think
like
it'll be
Croatia because of Modric.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm happy if either team wins. There's players on both sides I like. So.
yeah, I
But
think Canada
Modric
is decent.
has a special place for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a really good coach. He coached their women's team for a long while. I followed the coach more than the players, but he's a very good coach, and he's got them playing really well.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are in a bit of a depression, having tied the Colonies 0-0, and by all accounts, we outplayed you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
I
as
agree.
usual, the English media is coming in to, you know, to harass Garrett Southgate and the whole team and getting the wrong guys on the field. He's right.
Yeah. I thought
And
the US
if you
played
only have
better.
one player that's any good, yeah. You guys only had one player that was any good, and that was Harry Maguire. So that's like the most surprising result of all, that he's playing good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
We
poor
will
guy
see.
can't get a break.
And my kids were so frustrated watching that game. They couldn't believe it. They said, "What is going on?
Yeah.
We're passing from one fullback to the other almost all game." And Gareth Southgate afterwards said, "No, that is the plan. And we control the defense," or whatever it was that he said. And we think, what? Anyway.
Well, that U.S. formation, the 4-4-2, makes that center back passing very, very easy because they don't get anybody advanced. But it's hard to penetrate.
They stopped everything else.
England was a little too relaxed, I thought. So.
Yeah. I hope. Anyway.
But we can be relied on to not finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about today is learning different styles and seeing how they fit together. So this is all on point.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into the circle, and then we'll get started with today's lesson, the blending. Chin Long.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Quick on the button.
No, I mean, if I don't speak first, when I listen to everybody else, there are too many thoughts in my mind. You know, I should say that. I should say that. That's why I decided. Okay, I say first and listen later. You know, that's a peace of mind. Listen to everybody else, learning more about that. You know, that's why. Okay, I'll go to my usual way. So, work in progress. My word of last week is reborn, or rebirth, or reborn. The reason is, you know, the week before last week, you know, I did some live trading, get you know, many hours lost just because of repeated mistakes. That's why I choose the word. I think that's why. Anyway, that word come out. Next one, I want to talk about Thanksgiving days. No, Thanksgiving is not part of a Chinese traditional festival or holiday or whatever you call it. The other one is the Halloween. So I have to learn all those culture elements in Canada. By the way, in Canada, we celebrate Thanksgiving almost 1 month earlier. So that's in last month. I really want to say thank you to everybody, especially Ken, you know. I feel really special in this group. There's a question in today's traders exercise saying, come up, reset, then engage. How fast can you reset? So I really like this Creativity202 weekly. You know, if I cannot reset hourly, I can reset every morning. If I cannot get over something for a week, I know I will get fresh mind when I do this, you know, Creativity202 exercise and attend the live session. I really want to thank you, everybody, for inspiration, for encouraging. You know, attend this group, this lesson, really encouraged me to get over whatever difficulty, whatever obstacle, whatever emotional attachment to bad things happened in the last week. Rise in the morning again, do the exercise, think about all those school traders. Really, really encouraging for me. That's the topic one. So last week I did 2 days live trading, Wednesday and Friday. I did overall 16 trades and get a net 2.5 hour positive. That's how good it is. You know, what I found out is it's really difficult to hold winning trades. So Wednesday, you know, I take quick profit and seeing the trade go 1 hour and 2 hour, I only take half hour. So Friday, I decide, okay, I take a trade. I'm ready to give back, you know, negative 1 hour. I wait what happened. So still, you know, I get about 1 hour positive. So that's what I did for the live trading. What I found out, you know, it's really difficult for me to take the collapsing dragon. You know, I just cannot take it. I see the pattern. I see the kata 2, I cannot take it. And then the kata 2 develop into collapsed dragon, I cannot take it. So, you know, what I decide to do, okay, I will practice that, use a FOREX tester. I trade the collapsing dragon only, see how do I feel, how can I take it. That's about the trading. For the Fletcher exercise today, Blender, what I was thinking about, you know, the market selection is a big part of a trading system. And then there's a entry and exit strategies. What people think about that's a trading system. How about I blend the market selection? I learn from different coach, then blend it with the different patterns. Now, how do I use, you know, Bollinger Bands set up for trading, you know, Chuck Whitman's system, all those thinking. Now, the next thing I think about, how do I blended pattern specific to a system to another time frames. You know, I know the patterns, multi-pattern fractal, but how about you know, the same pattern in different time frame, you know, intraday, daily, weekly, even monthly. That's what I'm thinking. I think what I'm trying to do just to put together a trading plan, all those things I learned from different source, different expert. Many things still confusing. I think that's the one major reason why I haven't traded in a really profitable. Probably I didn't understand the trading system, the setup, the market selection, the time frame. So with the blender strategy, probably I get a better understanding of different trading strategies. About the trade histogram, well, you know, if somebody present a system with 1,000 trade back testing, you know, it get really nice SQN, really nice win rate. You know, there's a 1,000 trade, so that's a good system. But what I realized, what I trade, you know, follow all the rules, but still I get a small sample of the system. My trading could be really, really different from, you know, 1,000 trades histogram. You know, what I learned from that is really careful about the trading histogram presented by 1,000 trades versus the only trade I take. Maybe, you know, 1,000 trades for a position trading could be take me 10 years. Now, per year, I can take 50 trades. The result may be really, really different. The bad part is really worse. I have to be really careful about the trading histogram. Also think about the time frame. If I could make 50 trades in a day, you know, I may not care about the big winning hour. 20 hour maybe may not make a difference, you know, because I can make 1,000 trades in 20 days. You know, one big winner probably don't make big difference. But if I only take 50 trades in a year, that 20-hour winner really make difference. Those are my thoughts when I do the exercise. Oh, about the sun, you know, don't change horses in the middle of a stream. I think last week can post the YouTube link. I listened to that. The first thought come out from my mind is my marriage. Okay, you know, that's my first thought. You know, you know, I don't know about others. You know, in our Chinese culture, we don't talk about much about family issues, all the struggles we have. So really don't know much about other couples, but we have a lot of issues along the about 30 years marriage. Anyway, that's really the thought about come out when I listened the song first time. So this morning I listen again, think about our trading, you know. So one thought come out is I don't give up, you know, especially attending this Creativity 202 session. There's no way for me to give up. I choose who I would be, and I will, keep going, rise again, keep going again, until I get the result I had. It doesn't mean I will not change my trading style, trading strategy. I will not give up. Thank you, Ken, for the good song. I like it. For whatever reason, I like it, really like it. I hope.
You're on mute, Ken.
Sorry about that. Kyun.
All right, I thought I better go. It was quite a challenge. So anyway, I'll set a low bar so everyone can do better. I had this. So my week was actually slightly different to Chun Long's in terms of trades. On Wednesday, I kind of traded, but it was stop and reverse, and it was really got chopped up really, really poorly, badly, really. And then well, I can't remember who said this, Ken, but that one of the students or interns or ex traders, he said the one who said fail fast, fail down, fail forward, fail by design, fail under controlled conditions. You said it? Oh, I thought that. Okay, great. Thanks. So I've got that. I actually wrote it. I actually noted it down. So I've always got that. So I think I just kept telling myself, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I'm failing now, failing fast, learning what doesn't work, and just trying to reset mentally, really. And also don't trade FOMC, you know, minutes or anything like that is what I've note to myself. On the trader exercise, I don't have much of a feedback. I mean, I can understand where this is going, and obviously, I guess my thoughts were without the whales and looking at a system as it is. I mean, it's got good SQN and it's got what was it? I think it's got a higher win rate compared to the loss. I mean, if you just traded that system, it it's putting in the numbers, just putting in the numbers. I think like in one of your videos, you said if you have a 3-2 or something like that, coin flip, how many times do you want to do that? As often as you can. So I think in that kind of system where you have a positive expectancy, it's just keep executing, I suppose. And although in that diagram, it say execution is the key. I'm sure I can't figure out why it is the key or why it is, because people will execute in different ways. So I suppose that is an important, but how that's linked to the stats and all that, I can't figure out yet. So anyway, so that's me. And the other thing was what that set off was small increments. I can't remember what the Japanese word is. Instead of having that large, innovative step, you do it in small increments. I know that you posted a few of those in the last couple of weeks, but I can't remember what it is. So maybe you can tell me later. Yeah, so that's that on the trader exercise. Then on the blending, I must say I didn't get really in depth into anything, but I just kind of skimmed across the surface and thought about, you know, blends in different areas, like like food, for example. I mean, you have fusion food, and here we have the hoisin duck wrap, which is like a Chinese and Mexico kind of mix. And then you have barbecue chicken pizza, which is kind of interesting, right? And I think I've seen a tikka masala sandwich, which will be the Indian English mix, is quite interesting. I hear that Tex-Mex is a kind of mix. So I don't know too much about it myself. So that's in the food. And then in sports, I found something called Tech Ball, Teqball, which seems to be a mixture of football, tennis, table tennis, and volleyball. It's quite amazing who came up with that, but there's already a world championship, and so I think it's phenomenal. I'm sure there are other sports that have kind of blended, and evolved. In terms of thinking about, the personnel and things like that in sports, like in football or soccer, I was thinking, wow, what if Pep managed England with the golden generation of players? That would be something. But what if Southgate managed Brazil? That's I don't know how that would go with the Brazilians, but it's kind of interesting to think about. And then you think about all-star teams, right? But I'm so I'll use soccer because I'm probably most familiar with it. What if you play, Pele and Maradona together? Does it actually work? Are they playing the same position? And what about, the team dynamics, to have two big stars there, Messi and Ronaldo, if you played those. So it's just interesting to think about them. Then in terms of language, I was thinking of loan words and, etymology, especially English, which seems to have taken 80% of their words from so many other different languages. Like, we get from Latin loan words like etc., vice versa. From German, we have, kindergarten. From French, actually, we get renaissance, which links back to renaissance from last week, which means rebirth. Souvenir, which means memory in French. Then Greek, I think we get a lot from Greek. I was actually surprised to learn that music literally means the art of the muses, which are the kind of nine Greek goddesses who kind of presided over the arts and sciences. And from Greek also like democracy, people and power, photography, photo, light, and graphos, which is writing. From Hindi, I think we get things like mantra, nirvana, karma, which are all quite familiar to us. Chutney, dinghy, it's interesting, which means boat, small boat. From Japanese, we get things like tsunami, sushi, origami, karate, sudoku, futon, even wabi-sabi maybe. And from Arabic, we get hashish, which literally is grass in Arabic. And Sahara is actually means sand in Arabic. So okay, so that's my thoughts on language. I had the most, I guess, from music. Music seems to be really fertile ground for cover versions, different interpretations. So I'll just list a few of these. I won't sing it. So interestingly, I'll start with something from the Arabic music because my wife's Egyptian. So there's like famous classical Lebanese singer called Fairuz, and she had a song that was sampled and made into kind of a French rap song. I can't remember what the song is called, but anyway, that's one of them. Another French song is called Le Vent nous portera. It was years ago, was by a kind of band called Noir Désir. It's kind of hit, but it was remade like into reinterpreted into a jazz version, which actually I really like. And going to kind of English songs, you probably have things like I had this rap song, "See You When You Get There." It's really old. I'm not up to speed. It's Coolio, which had a classical section, which is Pachelbel's canon in D. So it was quite interesting. And then we had "Stand" by Eminem, which used I think Dido's song. All Tomorrow's Parties. I don't know if you know Velvet Underground, very old, but many cover versions and all very interesting. I guess the more interesting one is Blue Monday, which is from New Order, which is kind of in the 80s pop, which was a very, very big hit. And if you look on YouTube, I'll send you the link in a bit. There's a kind of orchestra using very old instruments. The band was called Orchestra Obsolete. Orchestra spelled with a K and not a CH. So anyway, I'll put the link on if you're interested. Yeah, so that was just my ramble and thoughts on the blend. I guess I maybe I'll close with this. Is does diversity always work? So as I said, no, my wife's Egyptian and I'm like Malaysian Chinese, and I think it can be a challenge, but I think you need to have at least one common thing or deep fundamental or deep level beliefs, so that you do share something in common for that to work. But yeah, I'm grateful for her and for actually for all of you here since Thanksgiving. And that's it for me. I hope.
Ernie.
I wanted to go first. You got to be fast around here. I kind of felt like I was going to be the one to drag this thing down, so I wanted to start off. So, but and you guys just take it up to a new level, and now I'm going to embarrass myself. Last week, whenever I started the lesson, it was an explosion of ideas, and this week I got into it, and it was like nothing. And I thought, I'm in trouble. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I kind of felt like I think in reading the lessons, I thought, well, I failed to build the skills that I should have from the previous modules to run the needed simulations or do justice to the 3 exercises. But one of the things that I've done, I have a book on my Kindle that I actually read, is the Clouds of Glory, which is the life and legend of Robert E. Lee, and it's by Michael Korda, I think. When I grew up, I was sort of intrigued by Robert E. Lee because he has the same birthday as I do. We were both born on January 19th, and I also grew up in the South. So Robert E. Lee, is a big hero for the Confederates. And this was before we started knocking down statues and deciding that what used to be war heroes were now ignorant people that didn't understand culture or whatever. But I always felt like he was an admirable person. He, I'm sure that, having to decide, well, I think having a war is bad enough, but then to have a civil war, that's got to be really tough, especially for military people. So I was fascinated by Robert E. Lee, and the biography that Michael Korda wrote was really good. He approached it from letters that have been written, and it's very detailed book, and it really goes into a lot of things. But there was another book that was written about the Civil War and talked about the South really had a chance to win it at the beginning. So it was, I kind of thought it did track with what the lesson was talking about. And only from the standpoint about having the simulation, you know, and dragging it out, not winning it, and how things went. There was this other book that I read, and forgive me, I'll probably mess this up a little bit because it's been a long time since I'd read it. But the argument was that Jefferson Davis had two leading generals, both Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. And Jackson, at the beginning of the war, advocated taking the war directly to the people of the North by attacking their factories, their farms, their harbors. He wanted them to feel it. He didn't want the war fought mostly in the South. He wanted to take it to the North. And the Jefferson Davis really, well, and Robert E. Lee had just the opposite viewpoint. He felt that the war should be fought on the battlefields. It should be a military type thing. And that, so Jefferson Davis basically went along with Robert E. Lee. And so, but then, as you probably know, I think at the end, whenever Ulysses S. Grant turned General William T. Sherman loose for his march to the sea from Atlanta to Savannah, that was 300 miles, that they fought what they, I mean, basically it was a kind of a scorched earth policy. They were going to march from Atlanta. They would reduce their need for traditional supply lines by living off the land. You know, the foragers would provide food. They would seize it from the local farms, and this food would be for the army, while they destroyed the railroads and the manufacturing and the agricultural infrastructures of Georgia. And then, according to, there was a 2022 American Economic Journal study said that the medium and the long-term economic impact of Sherman's march led to the capital destruction induced by that march led to a large contraction in agricultural investment, farming asset prices, and manufacturing activity, and that elements of the decline in agriculture persisted through 1920. So it was years before they recovered. Georgia may still be recovering today, since they have a politician who's asking pronoun, what's a pronoun? So they haven't, they may not have recovered from that march. So I kind of felt like I couldn't create a simulation, but Sherman did seem to use Stuart's tactics later in the war to effectively win it. So I saw a correlation, and but I'm probably getting off track from the lesson because the lesson wanted us to grow our creative muscles by running simulations of battles, but it wasn't to see who wins, but to see how long we can keep the simulation going, because each time one side gets the upper hand, the other side creates an innovative strategy. So I sort of see that, but I really found this interesting to me, reading the last line of the first part of our lesson, because that last line, one sentence paragraph, was that way. The only way for you to win is to sustain the conflict indefinitely. Well, I guess really investing is a form of conflict, maybe between the longs and the shorts. And we do want that conflict to be sustained indefinitely, because while there is that conflict, if we take the winning side, we're making money. And so that's the goal. So that was what I gained from the first part of the lesson. And that was my perspective anyway. Probably weird, but that's kind of what I saw. The Tower of Power, I really Lynn and I have been watching The Voice, and it's really interesting. Tower of Power has been around for, I think, 54 years. I mean, this band has been around a long time. We're watching The Voice, and these are mostly young people. Whenever they perform, sometimes there's an air of desperation. You know, they're really young. They haven't been tested through time. They haven't lost much. I mean, some of them are like 16, 17, 18 years old. They're young people, and they're starry-eyed, and they've got these visions of glory and stuff. But and then you watch a band like Tower of Power. There's really a difference, you know. They're seasoned. They have the experience. Some of them, I watched one of the concerts that they had. I think it was in last February, and they talked about how one of the horn players had just come back to the band. He'd been part of the band for years, and then he left. He joined the Navy, and then he came back, and he's back with the band. And they even have one of the young people. I mean, bands evolve over time. One of the guys that's part of the Tower of Power was on The Voice years ago. So interesting. And but also the song itself, I had heard that song before, and it was, you know, the Tower of Power they have a horn section, great for rhythm, which is what we were really looking for in life. You know, there's a rhythm in life. These guys, it was interesting because I had heard the song from an Australian band. It's like 3 or 4 members. It was called the Rebecca Johnson Band, and I read an interview from her, and she was saying that it starts with listening. And she said that they play the same songs, but they're always going to be different. And she also said that they want their fans to not only hear the music, but to feel the music. And she talked about how the songs evolve, that she sang a song 2 years ago. She listened to it. And the song that she sang 2 years ago, it's the same song, but it's different. And then she also said that they have rules, pretty much like what we're doing with investing. But she has rules. They don't overplay each other, and they're not supposed to be too loud. So I really think that there is a rhythm in life. My washing machine broke a couple of weeks ago. I was in the office. This was late at night. Linda's doing laundry. I don't know why she was doing it at 11 o'clock at night, but I'm in the office and I'm hearing the washing machine, and there's a rhythm to that thing. And you just hear it. And I just remember that something was off. But it was in the back of my mind. I just wasn't picking up on it. And then eventually I heard Linda say something, and we go out there, and the hearth room is all flooded. So the thing broke, and it flooded the house. So it was a mess. But there's just and then after that, we had to have somebody come out, you know, and they brought in fans and vacuum, and it had to run constantly, and this thing was so loud. So we're having to clean up the mess, and I'm having to put up with the loud noise from all these vacuum cleaners and fans that are trying to dry out the floor. And I think we had to put up with this for like about 5 or 6 days. This was a long time, but even that had I took a nap one day, and Linda said, "How can you sleep with this loud noise?" And I'm thinking, well, that was just a constant, and there's a rhythm to it, and it was comfortable. You know, I fell asleep with this loud noise going on. And but so I really do feel like there is a rhythm in life. You know, even, you know, they've talked about when you give CPR to somebody, you have a song in your head so that you're doing that rhythm to the heart, and until the heart gets its own rhythm back, you know, that you're doing that. So I do feel like I'm trying to look for that rhythm in investing. And there is, I do feel like there is whenever, because you want to get to the quiet state, and once you do that, you can sort of get to that rhythm. So I guess I want to end by just saying that from the Gwen Stefani, the Miami Sound Machine, the rhythm is going to get you. And I hope it does get all of us. Thank you. Aho.
Tom.
Well, I was a little bit, I was like Ernie this week because I read the lesson and I was like, huh? And that was probably like on Wednesday. So I had some free time on Thursday, so rather than dig too deep, I went back and I watched I watched last week's Creativity on the American session, because I mean I was in our session. I did watch some of our session because I never watched myself on film before, but I learned a lot from this watching me on how I don't want to just stare down all the time and talk. And the one thing I think I was avoiding saying is I think this is a religious poem. So there, I said that. And yeah, Renaissance is reborn. And while I was watching the sessions, I actually had a lot of thoughts on a lot of things I learned last week from everybody talking about it. And I think Kuhn mentioned the different parts, like the psych. You have a part that enters, and like Ken says, that's his only job. He only enters, and so you don't. And that made me really think about the times I enter, and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I entered wrong, or you enter, and then you're in the trade. And then the fireman, I know my fireman puts out a spark as soon as he sees it sometimes, so that got to be corrected. Got to talk to my fireman a little bit more, let my trades run. And then Sanal mentioning that how she related the poem to other people have been there. You know, you're not the first one. Other people have been through the same things, and that made a big impact on me. And then I was listening to Glenn talk about the beginner's mind. And I was like, oh, wow. I remember back when I used to just like, I didn't know anything about trading, and I would just, listen to something and just follow that. And it seemed like, I think one thing that it did, I had a good win, and it was like, wow, that kind of just like, hey, this is it, I'm gonna make big money in trading. So that was the big draw for me in trading, and over time, I think the beginner's mind, with all the other things along the way that I got involved in, or in different ways of trading and learning this and learning that, you forget that innocence of entering in and sticking with one thing, and the other things kind of clog your mind, and you start drifting away from the things that first, at least for me, drift away to other things and forget really how I was learning to trade and things that were profitable, I'll put it that way. So that was something really, really a good experience for me. And so then I used a little bit. I did trade a little bit on Friday, which wasn't bad. I mean, it just had a decent. Yeah, I trade most of the day, and then at about 11 o'clock, I know it was a short day, so I was trading Brazil because I was taking Ken's advice and to just trade one thing, and I think one of my notes I put here is like. It was a term I want to add. It's I put because I forgot the first word. It's like blank of all, master of none. So I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's being like I forgot the word offhand, but like you're into everything, but you're a master of nothing. Just like so, rather than just be involved in everything, I want to be a master of one entry, and then for like it could be the SSC, and then as I master the SSC, then I could add on another entry like for a collapsing drag. So I mean, it started making a lot of sense, and it's also in trading, but it's in other aspects of life too. I mean, that's the craftsmanship of trading. There's a couple. Those were some of my ahas this week. So as this morning went on, I decided, well, I don't really know a lot about generals in the beginning of the lesson, so I decided to look up some generals and some of the things. Well, I looked up general and their tactics. So one of them actually was General Lee. And one of the things I learned about General Lee was that he was when I Google searched it, it seemed like they didn't have a really, I mean, for his situation, they didn't really highly regard him because of it. He was always looking for a strategically high point versus the enemies. He wanted to be in a good verse, I guess, versus the strategy was being at an advantage. And one of the things I read about it, I think one of the things that hurt him was that the advance in the weaponry at that time, because in the South they had, I think they call it mallet weapons, where it had to be front loaded like a musket. And at the same time, the North was coming out with repeater rifles that could shoot for farther distances and accuracy. So he was fighting a more advanced technology using, and not that his tactics were horrible, but his strategies weren't going to work in the technology that existed or advanced during the war. Which comes to Ernie's point that, I guess Stonewall Jackson, if they attacked the factories and knocked down the ability to manufacture new technology in the North, then that would have helped. But unfortunately, that isn't the way it turned. So another general I read a little bit. I mean, I like General Patton, and he was very successful. Well, one of his models was move forward. He wanted to move forward and not rest, and achieve his objective, and then rest. And that was his driving force. I mean, the tactics he used to get there are a little more in depth that I don't know, but I know his overall strategy was just like, let's go get the job done, take what we got to. It wasn't like fortify lines and stuff. It was go and achieve your objective. Another one, I looked up Ramal, and he was kind of like a Patton on the German side, because he wanted to, his thing was to surprise the enemy. He was like, surprise attack and make the enemy retreat and then move forward. So I thought those were interesting. The one thing that comes to mind is that when we look at these generals and the tactics they used at the time, I guess we learned from General Lee is that if all of them use the same technology and advances at the time of when we're combining them, then the strategies that will have a different impact than just using the general. I mean, I think it's hard to say. I guess the generals used strategies that were successful at the time based on the weaponry and stuff they had. So to try to equal them out all with the same weaponry, it'd be pretty interesting. I did look at the there was a couple of Japanese names in the generals, and I did read that he had long periods of wars in Japan. Him and his rival, I guess, had 5 serious battles. They had a lot of respect for each other, and it was pretty equaled out. And that was the samurais. The thing, as far as the trading exercise, I was looking at the graph, and I think there was a 2R loss, which was the maximum, nothing more than 2R. I think it said -2. And he took out, there's a little note, I had to really magnify it, saying that he took out the, I guess the whale trades, we could call them, to see how the results of the trades, and it was a good system. I mean, with minimum losses, high big tails on one side, and I think it was a SQN of over 2. His win rate was almost double, not double, maybe 2/3 versus loss. So very good. It's a good system. The one thing about whale trades, I've been on both sides, unfortunately. I like when the whales hit, but I think because swinging, I think that was the one thing that I decided that after a couple of big losses, and I guess the whale got pulled back out to sea when I was riding them, that it didn't fit. So this is a good system, protect yourself. And I did have stops, but unfortunately it jumped my stop. But that's part of when you're swinging, which is another story. The few, as we're talking about the song, I did listen to the song, and as we're talking about these exercises today, it reminds me of when I was growing up. I knew a neighbor named George Sanchez. He was a drummer, and also he played guitar too. He was really a good musician. But he was in a band at the time. I believe it was in the 80s. And I was like, what kind of band, Because I was all into rock. And he's like, oh, we're in a fusion band. I'm like, fusion? What's fusion? Well, fusion is a blend of jazz and rock. So they put out an album, the fusion album back in the late 80s. Really awesome. But that was at the beginning period of it. And also I think of the fusion of the trading, the different types of trading that are like long-term, the swing and the day trades, and then the hybrid trading system, and how it all fuses together. And then using stocks, and then you could use fused in options to spike in more gains if you could use different types of strategies to carry overnight risk rather than using one type of system, which I did at the time of the I lost a couple of good losses. But overall, by the end of this week, I really learned a lot on the reflection and decided to be, at first, I never thought I'd want to be a day trader. I thought I don't want to watch a screen all day, but it's like Ken says, it's time, will, and pattern. And so when I walked away on Friday from the trade, actually I was in Brazil. Actually, Brazil, since I was off at home, I was looking at Brazil and Dow. Both the Dow did okay in a period of time. I think I made an hour on it or two. I did look at Tesla too, because I kind of roam when things were doing too much, and which is another thing I learned from the system, to look for the movers. But I was in Brazil, and Brazil was kind of choppy most of the day, but finally about, I don't know, it was around 11 o'clock, it started going down. So I took a collapsing dragon and stayed in, and one thing I lost was the will. So during the trade, even though I knew it was a short day, I got to the point where I was like, oh, I think it's kind of done. It's only a little bit of time left, and rather than stay in the trade, I closed out, which isn't bad because my will wasn't there. So I still closed out. It was profitable. So, but at the end of the day, I did come back, and as I looked at my assessment, I realized, wow, I lost like 2 or 3 yards. Actually, and so when I did my assessment, I looked at the 2 hour. I decided, well, I'm gonna put in my MMRBs and look at it and see where I could have did my 2 hour battle drill. And I think my end result would have been like a 6 hour gain versus a 1 hour gain. So I learned a lot just from that assessment. And so aho.
So no.
Hi, everyone. So, if you guys tell me that this was low bar or under preparation, I dread to think what this would be like if you were prepared. Yeah, I also wanted to go first after last week's escapade with him. So from this week's exercise, I spent a lot of time really on exercise 1 rather than thinking about simulations. But before I go into them, just want to pick up on a couple of things. Probably not allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Ernie and Tom Sullivan, you guys are looking really sharp with your spotlight. Whatever you've done with your filter, it's working. I needed to tell you that.
They're quite similar, actually.
Yeah, you both actually look quite similar, but it's really stand out today. So I don't know if it's, just your glory or the lighting or something, but I wanted to say that. The second thing was on Kian, a reaction. I think it was Kian was talking about, was it Kian? Somebody was talking about having difficulty taking a collapsing dragon. And you've taken me back to, it was Chunlong, thank you. So Chunlong, you've reminded me of something I learned when I started with Tortoise. So prior to Tortoise, I was all about little miss short trade. Any trade I could take that was a short, that's what I would do. And I learned as I was trading with this community all about the up and to the right, that beautiful up and to the right kind of trade. And that being the thing that I practiced and practiced and practiced became my trade. Wherever I see it, even if there's not much length in that line, I will take that setup and go up and to the right. So when we end up in a territory of bears, I'm either no lose, plus dinner for two, scratch, or a small loss. And on really bad days, I've been fighting it, lots of little losses. And what I learned was, you know, paying homage to exercise one, I did a switcheroo. And this is actually thanks to Jeff, and also somebody, Ken, there was an individual that was on Ken's course. I think this person was a doctor or an ER person. And what he'd said was, what if you just turned your charts around? So if you're in a hemorrhaging market and everything's going down and you know you want to get short, but for some reason you can't get short, is there any way of rotating the screens around so that you're now tricking your brain into thinking you're getting long? And so on TradingView, I don't execute on TradingView, I execute on another platform, but I would put the TradingView charts up, and it was Control I, it's what you said. So Control I, took it, and I just inverted the way the price displays, and I was able to take shorts by tricking my brain into taking longs. The other thing was learning patience. So I'm not the most patient person, but if I'm unable to take the short for any reason, and going through that conflict of I really ought to be making hay while the sun shines and riding this short, well, then there's patience in seeing and understanding a condition. And if you can't take it for any reason, say, you know, I said to myself, well, it doesn't fit for me right now, don't fight it. If I'm not fighting it, there's a win. If I can wait for it to get to whatever location and base and turn, then I can take one of my type of trades. But that was my, I guess, example of an exercise one of switching how I used to trade, how I became this kind of trader, and then how I recognized those conditions which frustrated the hell out of me, and then switched again. So just something to think about for whatever it's worth. Let's have a think about how I'm going to approach this. I spent a little bit of time thinking about, so the exercise was select a historical battle and have two opposing commanders switch sides. So my battle is, as we all know, the trading world. And there's two scenarios, if I can remember to do this. Well, the first scenario is the world of electronic trading. And the second scenario is of the retail trader. So scenario one, electronic trading, your pit traders against your quants, your machine guys, and then the retail trader against the institutions, and vice versa. So I hope this is okay. So with the first one, I'm going to be factually incorrect deliberately, just for the point of exaggeration and exaggerating stereotypes. So from the pit trading standpoint, if I'm picturing the scene of large number of large, huge men, burly, brutish, sweating, spitting, moving as a throng of people, loud, aggressive, in your face, trading. The tension and the energy and the noise, palpable, visceral, real. Pit trading. The other side, quant. Forgive the extreme stereotype. Erudite, quiet, A little bit pale because he doesn't see sunlight. Probably a guy. Sports backpack. Long forehead. Thinking. Quiet. Elegant fingers. Piano for the keyboard. Very fast. Very nimble. Seemingly small. Seemingly unmoving. So we know clearly what's happened to the pit traders. We've seen that battle play out. If majority of the pits, we all know, have closed down, and those few that are around are hanging by their fingernails. And the quants are winning that battle in the present day. So what if we switch them? What if we went back to the past and put a quant in the middle of the pit? Would they survive? Would they be able to trade? What would they do, and how would they not only survive, but trade well and thrive? So I haven't really played with the simulations, but if I did, one thing they could think about doing is hiring a goon. So pay well, hire a goon, and they can be brutish for you and execute trades. The second thing is I'm a little bit influenced from, is it Netflix or Prime? I'm not sure, but we're watching something called Peripheral. It's a sci-fi series, and it's based on gamers who sport headsets, which send them into different dimensions. At the moment, on the episode I'm on, they're going into the future, and they have the ability to enter the mind of a human and control the human and the human's actions. But they also have the capabilities of a character in a game. So, like, you know, Street Fighter is obviously not the coolest video game, but whatever the people are into these days. I'm obviously not a gamer. So what else, you know, if we put the pit trader in today's world, how would they survive? Because, you know, not all of them have withered away and gone. They adapt. So one could be a pit trader could hire a quant to codify their trading techniques. Or they could, what else could they do? Well, basically go into, I can think of a couple of pit traders right now, go into the education market where they inspire the next generation about what trading used to be like, the pros, the cons, the in-betweens. So I think that's all I'm thinking about. I mean, I just spent time thinking, rather than the simulation, what was the battle and where are we at, and who wins? And I don't know how that story ends. But if I then think about the retail and the institutional situation, so, you know, retail, what's the stat? Over 90% of the people that trade lose, something like that, something really encouraging. And the other kind of belief system is that institutions have an edge. It's rigged. They have very fast data feeds. They have all the information. They've got all the heft in the way of the money, so on and so forth. So the way that game is set up is that retailers will be, you know, the proverbial cow that is milked, and the flow of wealth travels in that general direction. I'm going into your direction here.
Thank you.
There you go. So, you know, who came to mind when I was thinking about this was, there's a chap, he's infamous, not in a good way now, sadly, but so they called him the Hound of Hounslow. I don't know if you have ever come across him. His name is Navinder, I'm having to look it up, Navinder Singh Sarao, S-A-R-A-O. And he's this guy who, I think he was born in the UK, lives in the northwest suburbs of London, working class, lived with his parents, on the spectrum, very quiet, very humble. and a gamer of sorts, from what I can understand. And he got himself into Futex, I think it was, like some kind of prop firm, and he started trading E-minis. I don't know if I'm correct there. So factually I could be wrong, but I think it was S&P E-minis. And he started to become quite good at what he did. And he became so good at trading using his computer methods that he started attracting attention within his workplace, and people would come and try and observe what he was doing on the screens to learn from him. And this guy would he'd separate himself from the group by putting on the headphones that construction workers wear, like really heavy duty, block everyone out. And he got better and better and better, and started attracting more and more funds from the firm that he worked for, that his wins became very noticeable. So much so that he started noticing that the trades he was taking were almost being front run. And he was getting frustrated because he was starting to think that, there are firms out there that are front running my positions. So he was losing that battle. And so he himself switched and thought, well, clearly this is a game they play. Can I play this game too? And so he developed software to effectively play the game that those institutions were playing, which became known as spoofing, which is where you put orders on, they're on the ladder, and then you pull them before they're filled. So before 2010, spoofing was not a crime. 2010 is when it came down on him, by the way, so it didn't end too great for him. But he, I'm sorry?
That was just Tom.
Yeah, it didn't end too well for him. So he was spoofing, and he was shaking down discrepancies in the market, and he was playing these big guys at their own game, and he got really bloody good at it. And we're talking multi-millions. I'll look it up as I'm chatting to you guys.
North of 100, if I remember.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't doing it to enrich himself, because he continued to live really like small in his home with his mom and dad. This was more about leveling the playing field and making fair for the retail guys the opportunity to trade, like against funds. And just as an aside, here we go, regulators estimate that he made $879 million, and he was all about gaming, really. And what happened for him is all the money that he made, he ended up entrusting it to other investors and guardians and financial advisors to say, look, I've just made this, can you put it into long-term savings or whatever you do, and I'm going to continue playing this game. And the laws changed, and because of something he did, there was a flash crash, which recovered the very same day, and some firm lost a bunch of money, and the securities commissions were notified of this. So they came after him and had him extradited to the US, and the US went for prosecution. And interestingly, the prosecutors, the guys that were interviewing him, realized that he's so on the spectrum, he has Asperger's, that he never had the intent. He lacked the intent of a financial crime. So he basically cooperated with them and educated them about what is possible and what is happening. And then since then, what I was thinking was, well, what if he lost that battle and he was being punished for adapting? What if he was at the helm of one of the large firms that he was competing with? So I started thinking, well, they kind of got away with it because it was accepted practice. And funnily enough, UBS, I want to say Deutsche, I'm not sure if it's Deutsche Bank, but two firms did get fined a little bit in 2016. But it took a good 6 years before they got a fine, and he was looking at imprisonment. Sad for him, he lost all his wealth. they didn't imprison. I can't remember if he served time. I think he served time in Belmarsh. Could be wrong, but he didn't serve time in the US. He lost his wealth and he came back to the UK, and I'm not quite sure what he does. But there's me thinking about, well, here was the battlegrounds, here are the different players, and what would happen if you switch them? So a little bit of simulation, but not too much on the first one, and no simulation whatsoever. It's just the appreciation of history, I guess. Ernie, thank you for picking up that line. The only way for you to win is to sustain the conflict indefinitely. And I'm always conflicted when I'm trading. And I continue to feel like, it should be easier. But should it? After I read that, should it? Because maybe staying, on edge, keeps you sharp, keeps you nimble, maybe. From a stats standpoint, it would be not credible of me to talk about this too much. I'll leave that to him. But what I will say is, when I see the whales, when I see that right-hand side of the histogram, rightfully, everybody should look at the middle bit and make sure the left-hand side is not alarming. But the right-hand side says to me, what else can be done? I mean, number one, what a great system that it allows Providence to intervene. And what an amazing system that winners have not been cut short and they've been allowed to unfold according to whatever, conditions that system allowed. But, if there were a research project that I was interested in, that would be exploring the right-hand side to see if more could be made of it. Just because that's interesting to me. And I don't know what it is. Maybe the word for the week for me might be whale, because I've had 4 instances of whale this week. This is one. You guys are talking about a whale trade. Second one was on Peripheral, the sci-fi show I talked about just a moment ago. There's a reference to whale there. There's a comedy program called Mammals. There was a whale on that, Whale and Tom Jones. And 1899 is a program which talked about a ship that disappeared, and all the passengers, there was 1,400 passengers on the ship that died, and they became ghosts. And the reason they died is because the sea became angry because they killed a whale. 4 instances of whale. Is that just random or what? I'll just say it's random. Anyway, I think that's me. So thank you for sharing, everybody. Aho.
I just froze for a second. Okay, got everybody back. Who's up?
I'll go.
Tom.
So thank you for all those. I'm still absorbing a bit, so I guess I'll come back around as it comes out. So I went through this and I in the time I had, I was not connecting with generals and battles, and so I put that on pause. However, the era I read most about was the Civil War. So that was interesting to hear your descriptions of the battles and strategies, Ernie and Tom. Thank you. As I got into kind of the first part of Ken's piece of look at these two systems, a system with whales and a system with the whales removed, and what do you see? That was a real light bulb for me to be able to go back and say, okay, so what if I did simulations on the trades I have, both day trades and swing trades for this year to date, and looked at that and looked at what would happen if I trimmed out the whales. So I went through and modeled. So what if I capped every trade at plus 4R? And what would that system look like? Now, on the other side of that, I've had some significant trades with losses less than 1R. So I also went through and modeled, okay, so if I capped the upside at plus 4R and just did what I did this year, it doesn't look so good. If I were then to model cutting losses faster, what would that do to my system, even with the winners capped at 4R? And it's remarkable how it significantly improves. So yeah, good insight and perspective, reinforcing yet again with my trades of how much I can improve the system by cutting losses faster. Not taking into account that some of my wins have been giving back more than I want to give back, so even more opportunity to improve those wins. So just having a set of trades and being able to do simulations of, if I were to apply different risk management rules, how would that improve my system? And if I didn't count on the big wins, which have made a significant difference for me this year, where do I get the best quality system for sustainable results into the future? So that was very powerful to be able to go through that and do that kind of framing and see where just simple decisions in advance of actually being in the moment of needing to make the call can tell me what to do, which is the key strategy I got out of going back through Quit by Annie Duke. Was she said, you know, quitting decisions are the hardest to make when you're in the middle of the decision. So trying to do it when you have as a human being, I have all these biases, this commitment bias because I'm committed to the position I'm in until I get out. This endowment bias because I own something and I'm tied to that. This sunk cost bias I have of, well, I've already given up this much, so I got to stay with it because it's going to turn around. All those biases that show up in my mind reinforce not quitting. So going through all those and saying, okay, the best practice is what Ken says, is know when you're going to exit before you enter. Have that really clear. Know systemically, so not just on a trade basis, but know systemically, how does that improve your system, which is the aha I got out of today's exercise was, oh, that really makes a huge difference and would significantly improve what I've executed if I just had some better risk rules known in advance that I consistently executed. Which brought me to kind of listening to Tower of Power, and what really attracted me when I looked at it was the first comment I saw below was someone commenting on the bassist, the drummer, and the guitarist, which got me to think about Okay, so what does the bass provide? What do the drums provide to the song? Because it's easy to have my attention get attracted to the horns going, or the words. But what's that underlying structure being provided by the bassist and the drummer? And so I read a little bit more about how the bass and the drum can play together, how they can blend at certain points, how they can complement each other, but provide that underlying structure. And that got me to thinking, okay, how do you just play that same bass beat again and again and again through a whole song? How do I do that more consistently in my trades? And I'm going to stop here. My wife just called me, so I'm going to go help her, and I'll be back. Aho.
Oh. Jeffrey.
All right. So where to begin? I'm bringing up the rear again, which I like to do actually, because I get to hear everybody else's stuff first, and then it always just inspires me. But sometimes I have to switch around what I'm going to say, sort of on the fly. I want to talk about the histogram, because then that just always draws my attention. But I think maybe we'll make that like sort of like the midsection here. I was thinking about other mechanisms or other blender battles, just on the usual exercise, right? And I'm not so good on historical, sort of military battles. And so my easy way of sort of like replicating that is to turn them into trading battles, which I've done before. And so I started thinking about different people that I've read about, historical or current, and then how that might sort of impact things. And so, one of those was, and so the strange thing here is that traders don't often necessarily like match up against each other and just butt heads, right? I mean, you're sort of like you're trading versus the market or something, but it's an interesting exercise, I think, to think about how different traders might have behaved, and is there something that somebody else was talking about? I think it was Ernie, but I may have got that wrong. It's almost like that change in technology that happens along the way as well. And so the two traders that kind of came to mind for me in this exercise were Paul Tudor Jones and Jesse Livermore. And I think there's some similarities between the two. And one of the things that Solon and I were sort of discussing was the difference in technology that kind of goes along with that, right? And so there's not only technology, but there's almost an advantage, because Paul Tudor Jones was a great studier of history, specifically around the Great Depression and the things that ran into that sort of like 1929 crash. And he would have been a studier of Jesse Livermore as well. And so he has the benefit of seeing how all of those things played out. And so how does that sort of change, change I guess the battle scene? And it's so that was one thing that kind of came to me. And to switch it a little bit, as we were speaking just today, as all of you were talking, I started thinking about the sort of blending of trading styles, because you've got trend followers and mean reverters, options sellers, scalpers, algos. You've got all these different sort of styles that are sort of in play at all times. And, in a way, these guys are the guys battling it out every day. And so what's the difference in battlefield there? And the difference really is sort of like the market condition, right? I mean, so what's going to determine who is most likely to maybe win or have the advantage there? And then that just sort of got me thinking about what we tend to try to do. It's kind of an R factory thing of, just that system of systems, and then that diversification of different ideas, trending, mean reversion, blending them all together, so that, that one of them will probably have a favorable environment at times. And then as a whole, we should have that, sort of lovely upward sloping equity curve that we sort of think about. So let me pivot a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the trader exercise, the histogram here. I always love looking at these stats, and Sol doesn't like it. So it was easy for her to say, "Oh yeah, you talk about the stats."
Yeah.
And so, and what stands out to me are a few things on this. And I know I'm familiar with the exercise, but just looking at the numbers, this is just one day. I don't know what the system was, or who the trader was, maybe, or what was going on. It doesn't matter, right? But it was just one day, and so 48 trades in a day. Pretty good going. We think we've done too many.
Yep.
And 48 trades is pretty good going. Chun Long, you were talking, that's a year's worth of trades for you on a swing basis, right? I think you were saying something like 50 trades. So that's just in a day, but it's a decent sample as well. And the other thing that just sort of stuck out to me, or took me a minute to just sort of normalize in my head, were the two different histograms going on. And I think a subtle difference, which, not only have we removed the whales out of the right-hand side, but we have also changed the histogram increment. You can kind of see that there's a value for that. So I think what that probably means is that the buckets get smaller on the bottom histogram, because for me it wasn't making sense. It didn't look like the histograms were the same with just the whales removed. It actually has a slightly different shape to it, right? And so we've made the buckets a bit smaller, so the histogram is a bit more spread out, and now we can see things better. So that made sense after I figured it out, but it took me a minute to figure that out. So I thought I'd just mention it in case you guys were thinking the same. With regards to, obviously we're going to take away those nice big winners and turn them into small winners. I think 0.3. So, what that means is that none of the stats change as far as like win rate and all that sort of thing. But, our average, standard deviations, the SQNs and that sort of thing should change. Of course, the total R changes. But, what's of interest to me is the SQN, and the SQN is the same, more or less, right, within sort of like 100th, and that's for both of them. And so how can the SQN be the same when we've taken these big winners out? And when you look at it a little bit closer, you think, okay, well, it's because the standard deviation drops, and then the average kind of drops along with that, because we've taken those big trades out. And great that the SQNs are the same, and that you could trade the system perfectly happily without needing the whales. That's sort of the point, right? Even better if you kind of have the opportunity or the possibility, of capturing the occasional whale with the system. But also it just kind of reminded me, it's partially because SQN penalizes that upside volatility, right? So it penalizes you for having those whales in a way, because that means that the overall standard deviation is higher, and so that's just going to make your SQN actually lower because of it. So you can either run with that, which is totally fine, and that's kind of where we've ended up doing, or you can think about trying to remove that, but it also can change your view of what SQN is. Because in theory, we shouldn't really penalize those upside vol trades. We should be penalizing the things on that sort of left-hand side of the histogram, and that's what we really kind of care about. And it's the difference, really. It's the same idea, if you guys are familiar, as Sharpe ratio versus Sortino ratio. So the Sortino, the difference there is that it takes out the penalizing of the upside volatility. So anyway, those are just a few sort of thoughts that I had on the stats there, and but a really good exercise, because it's a really good, you know, sort of reminder on enabling those outsized winners to basically happen and exist, and, you know, trying to leave those into your system in some way, knowing that you, or just not even expecting to get them very, very frequently. And there's other examples of systems that come to mind that I won't bore you with today, that sort of enable that sort of upside, that upside potential, whilst also trying to capture, you know, some of that meat in the middle, so that you come out with something sort of no matter what, but on occasion you'll catch some of those winners. Sometimes you can scale out and leave a small piece on, and then that one can actually turn into quite a large winner over time. It's kind of like that. Let me think about it. The turbo to core sort of idea, right? Anyway, let me go back. I'm going to revert back a little bit to the blender exercise, because something else came to me as we were talking here, and it was something that I was thinking about earlier. But if we weren't talking traders in the battlefield, maybe we were talking about guys who were maybe just in business, and they could be considered traders, but maybe these are sort of, you know, guys who are big players in business, or CEOs, or active investors, or whatever it might be, who are sort of like, the battlefield changes to the boardroom in a way, or just, you know, it's sort of like the guys with the money. And a few came to mind just as we were talking here, which I thought was an interesting sort of way of thinking about it. So with a this is fictional, of course, but with a trading bent, Bobby Axelrod from what's that program called? Billions, right? If you've ever watched any of that, you know, there's a bunch of sort of you know, things that go on behind the scenes to force events to happen in your favor. The one that kind of comes to mind, there's one where he wants to, I'm going to probably change the story here, but he essentially wants a company to do poorly. And so he essentially fakes, I think it was a juice company, remember this one? It's a juice company. He fakes a series of people getting sick off of what was sort of like a healthy drink, and then he makes up a reason for it, and the stock collapses. And what I want to say is he buys the stock cheap, but he also may have just been in a short and he needed to get out, so he engineered his way out by doing that. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting way of being on a battlefield. So, you know, what if we put like some of these guys, you know, head to head as generals against each other? Another example could be Elon Musk, right? And this whole Twitter piece, or it could have been other ones, but Twitter was the most recent that comes to mind. And, you know, you guys are probably familiar with this, but he puts in a bid for Twitter. Twitter's price goes way up. He tries to kind of back out of it. There's underlying reasons as well for, you know, why is Musk doing this? Does he really believe in the sort of you know, freedom of speech? Is that his main driver? Or does he really just need a publicly acceptable way, because he put a poll out asking his followers what he should do? Does he need a publicly acceptable way of selling out a whole bunch of Twitter stock, of Tesla stock, because, you know, he's pretty overloaded on that, and whenever he sells out, and he's going to drive the price down. So he managed to do that regardless, and then he had his Twitter battle, and then he ended up taking it over, of course, right? So those are sort of two, and I'm thinking, well, what if you put in, you know, Elon Musk up against Bobby Axelrod, maybe over a Twitter battle or whatever it might be, and, you know, you can imagine some potential sparks flying or something like that. So one other came to mind on that, in a similar vein, and it was there's a guy, I'm pretty sure I got the name right, called Lord Beresford, and this was back in the, I don't remember, I think it was early 1900s. He was an English sort of blue blood aristocrat, very wealthy type, and this leads to sort of the whole sort of gambling and casino thing. And I talked about this once before, but on a, I think it was a Kansas Research Weekend, but it's a really interesting story. He basically was using a roulette system that he thought he could break the Bank of Monte Carlo with if he had enough guys, this army of guys sort of trained up in a certain way of operating. And he thought he could break the Bank of Monte Carlo, as in the casino itself, and then make a bunch of money in the process. But it wasn't actually after making a bunch of money. The alternative motive was he wanted essentially the casino's value to dip so he could buy it. So his ultimate aim was actually buying the Monte Carlo casino, and this was just a mechanism to get there. And so anyway, now I'm putting Lord Beresford up against Elon Musk, Bobby Axelrod. So anyway, Blender just got all of those sort of creative juices sort of floating around in random ways. So that's what happens. That's what happens on these Sundays. Now, just to finish off with something a little bit fun, and gambling related, which I know that we're trading and not gambling, but they are closely related in a lot of senses. And I went and saw a few guys this week. It was sort of a Thanksgiving thing, but I often meet up with a few guys that I've known over here, traders from over here. And Thanksgiving was a good excuse because the markets are closed or quiet at least. And so we went for sort of like a seasonal meal at a place in the city that we often go for beers after some of the STA events. And it's great. It's great to see these guys. I hadn't seen them in a year actually in person. So that was good fun. Now, one of the guys he's into his sort of horse racing as well. And he likes to do trading too, but he's into these horses. But he's not a gambler with it really. He runs a system on this, and he knows his stuff very well. He's also, I don't know, he's got to be in his late 70s. But he's super sharp with it, and he's up to date on tech and stuff. But he started talking about how, when you go to these horse racing events and you get the guys, the bookies taking the money, and they're, everyone, they become your best friend, and then they're trying to figure out how to get your bet to come to them, and then they'll give you, like a 4-to-1, but they're gonna or they give you a 3-to-1 and they go and get a 4-to-1. I forget. They basically arb it out to make sure that they get paid. And there's a whole bunch of little sort of tricks and stuff that happen that I didn't know about. Like for example, on the train on the way to some of these horse races, the guys will be there and they'll be just playing cards on the train, and then they'll try to strike up a card game with other people who are on the train and going to the event. And really what they're doing is trying to find the sucker or the people that are going to be more easily manipulated, or they'll become their best friend. And then when you get there, they're essentially the bookies, and they'll say, oh, my mate John, he'll look after us. And people get attached to that, and ultimately they don't get the best odds, which I just found sort of interesting. And to pull it all sort of back to the World Cup in a way, that led on to a conversation about laying the draw on football games, like American football games. So I'm sorry, proper football games. So soccer games. And I'm not into this either, but it's an interesting idea, and some of the guys had been active on this. And so there's a system that you can run where you essentially you're laying or shorting that the game will end up as a draw. So you're saying the game will not end up as a 0-0 or a 1-1, 2-2, whatever that might be. I always find it annoying in a way that you can end up with a 0-0 like we saw with England and the US on Friday, right? It just ends up being a boring game if the guys end up being sort of okay with a draw. I understand why it's there, and I understand the tactics behind it, but from somebody watching, right, from an observer's point of view, it's a bit more exciting if you have to win, right? If there has to be a winner, which of course you get in some games, right? That's when you get the penalty shootouts. But so laying the draw turns out to be a pretty well-known thing, I guess. And so you can, and I guess the way the system goes, you you put your bet on, or you become the bookie, and there's things that you can do this in the UK at least. I don't think it's legal in the States, but there's a very complicated or complex system called Betfair in the UK. Really good tech that goes behind all of this, that's constantly matching up sort of like people who are betting on various things all the time. So you can basically say the game will not end as a 0-0. And then essentially what you do is whoever scores first, whenever the first goal gets scored, you just close the bet out. That is like the peak of goodness for that particular trade. It can't get any better. It can only get worse, right? So and it's almost like that sort of mean reverting thing. It's like picking up those small wins all the time, and then occasionally it's not going to work out, right? Like, which is what we saw on Friday. So there we go. We've blended some gambling with some business tactics, with some trading, and some traders. So a bit of a ramble. Thanks for sticking with me. Aho.
Hey, Tom, did you have any closing remarks, or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead. Okay, I'll go ahead. Yeah, so I didn't do the commander against commander military effort because I lived that for 45 years. Now, what I have done a lot of, though, is actually built war games where I'm trying to create different style opponents to represent a certain style of play, whether that's in chess or whether it's actually in actual war games. Like I used to use a war game scenario generator called The Art of War 2. And we modeled a little scenario where it was Bilbo Baggins and the Invisible Ring and Sting against the spiders, and you could change the behavior of the spiders by adjusting different, so you could have styles of spiders to test Bilbo Baggins against the spiders. And then also in chess, like at chess.com, you can select different bots to play against, and they have different personalities, and you can try your different styles against them. Like they bring the queen out early, or they don't bring the queen out, or they try to force a war game, an end game right away. Well, this has a long connection to scenario forecasting and corporate wargaming, developed probably in public by some Scandinavian oil companies that developed out the whole discipline of scenario planning, of what to do when the world was so complex, like global energy markets, and you can't model every possible outcome and all the different actors, but you could describe different kinds of genres, and then test your mechanical approaches against these different regimes. And then you could learn to develop decision rules about what kind of scenario or what kind of system to trade based on whether you were going for the biggest win, avoiding the worst loss, best average return, all of those different decision rules for evaluation criteria for a system. And it comes right back to the ideas of your performance measures that you're aiming for out of your system. What is it that you actually need the system to do? Do I need a lot of opportunities that are getting between -1 and +2, and I can forego, the jackpots? Or do I want a system that has the possibility of getting a jackpot, but at no additional increment of risk. So Chuck Whitman and I had a long discussion on this probably 15 years ago, where the biggest problem that he had in his mind was that he had some STEM PhDs that he'd hired to be his traders, because they were the kinds of guys that could appreciate stats and had demonstrated discipline in getting their degree, so he wanted them as traders. And he was looking at the performance statistics, and the biggest open question in his mind was what to do with guys who were outperforming the system the way the system predicted it should return. So they were getting abnormal returns. And his basic practice was to stop them from trading further, because he was under the assumption that they were taking on excessive risk, and it just happened they got the fat tail to the right and only luckily got the fat tail to the left. And I told him he found to be helpful, and that was take a look at all of their outlier trades and then reasonably estimate how much risk they had at every point on the curve. Were they carrying overnight risk when they shouldn't have? Were they sticking around too long? Or, that kind of stuff. And then start examining those to determine if the excess return was a function of excess risk, or was it simply, no, the market just kept going and they only ever had a 1-hour risk in a continuous market that was liquid, and they could have exited, but it never hit the stop. And so they were able to bracket the trade or, adjust the stop all the way through. So they were never taking more than a 1-hour risk, but it just so happened to be a 17R because that's what happened. And so that insight helped him, I think, with the way he was refining the assessment of system performance. And so that was the issue with the histogram that I showed you guys, that it was an intraday system, and there were 2 whales that doubled the system performance. But even without the whales, it was a perfectly tradable system intraday. You got tons of opportunities. No one trade other than the whales was responsible for the positive returns. You had a favorable win rate, and your average win to average loss was favorable. So it had all of the, check, check, and check. And then, oh, by the way, it also occasionally gets a whale with no additional risk just by following the rules. That's what you want. A whale has washed up on the beach. We know what to do when that happens. You lock the door so the wolves don't steal the larder while you're out harvesting a whale. You don't want to give up what you had because you're chasing a beached whale. And it's different between harvesting a beached whale and going out on these little boats to get a live one. As Gandalf, I think, or Bilbo said, it's you should never set aside a live dragon or something like that on your plan. Don't underestimate the effect of a live dragon. Something like, I forget the quote. So what I tried this week was documenting a bunch of tangent points and stuffing them not only in chat but also in the replay link to this when we get this thing video. So there's all of those chat notes are going to be in there, because I'm actually looking ahead to after lesson 30 there is 10 myths about creativity, and each one of them is one moment of insight from Fletcher that connects to other things that he's learned from the research. It doesn't have exercises with it, but my thought is that what we should do is treat each of those 10 lessons and design your own adventure. You guys have talked a bit about being able to go back and watch this or listen to that and study one more thing from your task list. I think what we want to do in those 10 weeks is maintain one myth per week. Use that as the trigger of the week, but then use that also for you guys to go back through your notes and through the other lessons and go harvesting, data mining, insight mining, and and I think that's what we want to do, and then maintain the momentum of work in progress, but without a directed experiential exercise, but give you a chance to go deeper on the ones that you feel like deserve more attention. So start thinking about how you want to do that. We got about 6 or 7 weeks before that happens, but you don't want that to jump up on you, or do you? Feynman says the best thing to do is to take something that you're passionate about and then study it in a almost random, slipshod, effervescent manner. Just go wild with it and then trust that it'll come up. So that was kind of his style, to go way deep into something and then followed his childlike enthusiasm to see where it went. So that's a technique. That's a style. That's actually a Feynman style, if we were going to say, how do I adopt different styles in my deliberate practice? Well, in basketball, I've studied the way NBA players of my era shot the basketball and modeled their peculiarities. Now, what's interesting about the NBA is that improved technique has almost eliminated idiosyncratic shooting styles. Like, you could go back and watch Dick Barnett used to shoot like a left-handed inverted question mark, and Bob Love, a forward for the Bulls, had a very particular recognizable shot, and Earl Monroe. Well, now you look at this generation of shooters like Steph Curry. That dude is mechanically pure in every way. And all the good three-point shooters have exactly that same kind of setup, set, and release, mechanically pure. So you get incredible performance, but you have lost a lot of that idiosyncratic style. In chess, it's similar to that styles have become almost a thing of the past. That technique is so good that it just determines what really is different is how hard does a guy want to fight? How much imbalance and tension and under optimization is he willing to tolerate in his own position to encourage you to go for the win so that he can then counterpunch? And so Carlsen does that all the time. Tries to induce weakness in his own position that lures people in, and he can take them out of their book preparation. You can watch Fabiano Caruana is legendary for his depth of computer-based book knowledge, and their 24 games in the World Championship before this last one ended up in all draws because he was so technically straight that Carlsen was just trying to not lose so that they could get into rapid blitz and bullet, in which he just crushed because it was his artistic feel for the game took Caruana out of his depth right away. So there's this whole idea of adopting the other side of the trade and what can you learn. I would also take a look at the systems that you generate that you throw away, or you say, hey, this thing should not be trading in this kind of a market because it doesn't return. If the underperformance is that bad, you have a system. It's the other system. It's the other side of the trade. And it took me years to figure that out on things like 5-day down and washout, that the 5DD failure, 5DDF, in every market is a great trade. You know, it just is. And that's sort of what led also to the collapsing dragon and the other forms of the failure trades, is that the SSC, when it works, leads to kata 2s when they work, and you can go up a chain 7 or 8 trades in a series. But when they fail, and when did the support beam crack? And you get the nonlinear collapsing dragon. When that thing cracks, you get this outsized whale to the downside. That's the essence of the collapsing dragon. So my notes in the chat were sort of along this line, that the S&P itself is the jack of all trades. The S&P buy and hold contains all of the different stylistic systems that are out there, to include how much money is put on those. So you get the aggregate jack of all trades system is the S&P buy and hold. And it defeats 85% of the styles. So you should just be a jack of all trades trader. Right. Except there are times when, if you do the pros and cons, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the jack of all trades approach, it turns out that there are certain regions and times when it is at a distinct disadvantage, like momentum trades to the downside when volatility is high and everybody's model is broken. And that's why, to me, the volatility is not a measure of risk. Increased volatility, to me, is the opposite of risk. That's when I thrive. That's when I find trading the absolute easiest, is because there are no choppy sideways, no follow-through days. Every trade is follow-through massively. That's the opposite of sideways quiet channel that just chops you to death. That's when trading is hard, because you're going to take 10 losses in a row and then you lose heart, and then the next one explodes. You say, oh man, and now you learn the wrong lesson that I should. So that's when it's hard. Lack of volatility is hard. So that's why I stay out of the river. Start with the abnormal. And that's the idea of the SSC, by the way. You give them the first trade. I give you the first surprise massive follow-through that everybody's hunting for. I don't care about it at all. What I want is the reversion to the norm, that starts from an abnormal condition, massively abnormal. That's what the washout pattern is. That's what the falling star is. The only time I care about sideways quiet channel is when it is so abnormally quiet that the quietude is itself the abnormality. And that's when you get the Z3P or the legendary super pinch, when everything is collapsed into the acorn. And that's the other secret. A million acorn. Don't spend time trying to sort acorns into which one is going to be the biggest oak tree. All of them are. They all are. That's why they're acorns. That's why oak trees win, is because they produce identical acorns. Don't try to sort the acorns into shape and style and heft and all. Just plant a million acorns, or hire squirrels to distribute acorns in little piles. Where do squirrels hide acorns? In dead trees. What's a dead tree? The perfect place to nurture the growth of new trees, because it has all that organic material and it's dark and retains moisture, etc. So think about when we get into the myths of trading, start developing your strategy now for how you're going to data mine through your notes and through the lessons and all the opportunity. I've made a lesson of my notes, or like a note sheet for each of the lessons so far. I've been posting them. That may be a place to start to remind yourself where you want to go, or go through your learning journal or your top 10, or do the Feynman technique. Just be open to which ones do I feel drawn to. Generate that list as a working list of 10, and then you're probably good. That way you'll be satisfied you have a broad enough view. Or come up with your own strategy. I'll give you that challenge. What's your strategy for data mining the rich field of fallen trees that we've gone through and hacked? We've hacked this original growth forest, and now we have some new sunlight coming in, and now we're waiting to see where the next saplings are coming up, like a fire. That's what natural fire does, is it goes through and clears everything out and generates actual biodiversity. That's what fires do. So that's everything I want to talk about. I'm going to upload a little PDF for corporate scenario planning and wargaming, because that is the essence of what it is that we're examining in this in this lesson this week is how to deliberately take the other side of the trade, how to put two bodies in motion and look for the spark, see what happens, what are the expected outcomes, what are the unexpected outcomes. Those are the kinds of things that matter a lot. So that's everything I got, and aho. I am so ready for Spain and Germany. What a match that's going to be.
My reminder just dinged up a second ago that it's an hour off. Somebody sent me a link which drops every game into your calendar like an ICS file. So they just like now they just kind of plop up. So
Yeah.
it's that's gonna be a good one.
Huge for Germany and all the other teams, actually, given the results today. Japan losing to Costa Rica.
Yeah. Costa Rica will surprise you. They have a team.
Yeah.
Hey, the link I just put in chat is my brother's effort to look at the 3-day and 9-day bars, looking at simple PSAR flip, long only, for large asset classes. Because Bob Rourke and I have been doing this for about 10 years, looking at weekly and monthlies, and we started looking at 9-day and 3 days. It turns out that the 9-day PSAR flip on the S&P may be all you need. You know, I was telling you, hey, what's the indicator that you need to know when to trade against the jack of all trades? The 9-day PSAR flip, 9-day bar, PSAR flip. Just take a look at that. It's an odd time, right? So it's 9 days. So it's more than a week. It's less than 2 weeks. You get a couple of those every month. And it's something that the longer term asset class manager, the asset allocator, and asset rotator. Now what you do is you get something like the BMR, or a sufficiently large number of liquid assets that are out of phase. So you want the least correlated large liquid asset classes, and then you just trade those in a cycle, know where they are in the MACD histogram season, and then use the winter to start stocking the ones that are approaching the turning point, and then you just take an SSC entry the other way. So that's the 9-day. So Bill and Bob looked at that. It's like 4 times the S&P, half the volatility. So that was that. Well, now take a look at the 3-day and use that as a front run on a 30% position, and then it eliminates your regret. You might get some short-term wins, and it leads to other turbo trading. But when the 9-day flips, you then put the remaining 70% on, so you have a turbo and core. And then on the other end, you exit 30% when the 3-day flips as a hedge. You could actually use that money to get market neutral if you wanted. You don't have to, but that's something for you to test. And then if it does fail, you just get out when the 9-day flips at a less loss. But then you can put the 3-day flip back on if the 9-day holds. So the link that I just pasted in there, let's see, it should be, let me slap him around. Save that link. He said that he had fixed it, but maybe he didn't. So I'll get that fixed today. I mean, he literally sent me that note 5 minutes ago that said he'd fixed it. So just keep that in your pocket, and we'll get it fixed. Anyway, that's my aho. That's free chicken, by the way. 9-day PSAR flip for the win. And I really want to encourage all you guys. I'm going to put out a note one of these days and say, look, before Christmas, I want a 20-minute TED Talk from you guys summarizing your experience with the creativity course that just captures your lessons. Even if you use that as an opportunity to describe your plan to go back on round 2 and harvest the rich ground when we get into the myths, give me a short story that'll give you a free pass into the annual research weekend. I normally charge $500 for that for the people that are presenting, and $1,000 for other people to listen to you. But I'll just give you that if you will do that work, and you'll get another value for the time invested. Jeff and Sonal, you guys owe me more. You got to come up with some kind of update to your system. This is a good opportunity for you to get your face out there some more. So whatever it is you want to do, I need it before Christmas. 20 minutes is the target because that's a TED talk, but don't exceed an hour unless you have to. 20 minutes is the target, but take as much time as you need really to do it right.
Okay.
Ken Hum and Luke Crockford's presentations from last year have done so much good for the community that it's and their own trading. It's phenomenal. So that's sort of the target there, and Tom's too. I mean, your stuff on team building and has been very helpful to many people, more than you'll know. So we're gonna target before Christmas for delivery. If you need me to set up a Zoom session for me to record it and you brief me, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. Just schedule time with me to do that, and then we can do a Q&A and sounding board and a coaching session all in one. So if you want to do it that way, that's fine. If you would like to just generate your presentation, send it to me, and I'll add comments to it later. We can do it that way. It's completely your call, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But I feel like we need to get some stuff. We need to get some artifacts built and delivered. So I'm gonna also turn you on to this idea. It's called the PARI system. And it's a system that just gets things moving without overly elaborate detail. Like sometimes you build too big a to-do list. So the P stands for packed. And this is a hat tip to Ness Labs. So the P stands for packed. And you make an agreement with yourself that you're just going to maintain momentum and keep going towards your vision. And then A is an artifact, I think, it's either act or no, it's act and artifact. I remember what it was. It's act. So you just do something. You take a step and you go, and then the R was, God, what did she call that? It was like reflect. And maybe that's where the artifact comes in, is that you publish something on it where you document what it is that you learned or something. And then the I is an impact, and that's the so what and the follow up and the springboard into action. So it comes from, I will send you a follow up, but it's from Ness Labs. I want to give her credit for this. But it's really designed to maintain momentum, keep going, produce things, get an artifact created, publish it, so that thing is in the world actually gaining effort. So flashcards and things like that, really, the PARI system, you'll see it has a very elegant approach to it. And it says that what you want to have is a system that generates momentum and positivity and is biased towards action and documentation, rather than having elaborate goals and measures and a perfect end-to-end solution before you start. It really just says go and then adjust. But you need artifacts to do it. So it resonates pretty strongly with me. I sort of keep hogging the microphone here, but
Ken, quick question for you. What the annual research weekend? Could you remind me when that's happening, or when it's?
Yeah, it's what I want to. We're going to do a virtual on that one. So what I need you guys to do is collect is to produce all your artifacts. I'll get those onto a great big schedule, and then what I'll do is I'll publish a schedule for probably the week of December 15th and onward. That we'll dedicate some weekend time and a schedule to discuss Q&A with the author. So generate your thing, and then I'll give you a time window for you to sign up, and then we'll have people. We'll do a Zoom session that's for your presentation, so you can go right into Q&A without having to, like sometimes the THARP presentations, they last an hour, and everybody listened to that stuff for the first time, and so they have superficial questions. So what we want them to do is hear the 20-minute TED Talk and then open it up for Q&A. That's kind of the intention. So I want all that stuff done before Christmas, but realistically, it'll probably take us the month of December to complete all the Q&As once we look at different time schedules and stuff. So what I'll do is I want to get them published by the 15th and then collect the questions to feed you so that we can come into the Zoom session with an agenda and the second round of Q&A really ready to go. So let's try that. So let's aim for December 15th to have your 20-minute TED Talk done. And like if I gave it to the end of December, it wouldn't be any better. So just take 2 weeks, get a 20-minute, and we'll use that PARI system. Just get a good enough thing going, get it out there in an artifact, and let's start generating second and third generation Q&A discussions. So let's do that.
Okay.
I'll put that out in writing today.
Cool.
After Spain, Germany. I hope that game hasn't started yet.
Yeah, half an hour, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 1 p.m. Central Time, so I still got half an hour. Time to get some breakfast too. We ate the Cajun turkey. Oh my God, from Popeyes. Popeyes Cajun deep fried turkey. Holy mackerel. If you guys ever needed a reason to move back to the States or move to the States for the first time, that's a good enough reason, believe me. I will never eat turkey in any other way. Holy smokes, was that good.
So Ken, was
Now,
that
deep fried
20-minute
turkey is
talk
like a
just
survival.
for Jeff
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Samel?
All of you.
Oh.
No, you too.
Oh, okay.
You too.
No worries.
20 minutes. You got to come up with a 20-minute action plan. Use the PARI model, if you will, and what she's actually using in that. She often pairs that with a plus minus next, which is really strengths, improves, and action in our daily AAR. So it really strongly aligns with the way we approach the daily AAR, which asks you to look at your plan, prepare, execute, assess every day, strengths, weakness, or improvement, and then a couple things that you're going to act on, that you commit to action. And that's her plus, minus, next. The next is sort of okay, what am I going to do about it? And that's just another way of doing what we've been doing for 20 years. But the PARI system is a nice counterbalance or counterweight to like atomic habits and getting things done systems, which sometimes collapse under their own weight of administration. And Feynman says, just keep going on the most interesting thing. That can be I don't necessarily rely on a child's birthday party for all my systematically good ideas. So to me, the PARI and the strengths, weaknesses, action approach is a nice way to keep things moving. I mean, I like a big long list of to-do things, so I never feel satisfied. But when it comes to picking the thing and going, pick one and go. Every step is the right step. The next step is the right step. That's the one you should have taken, was the next step. You almost can't do it wrong. And when the world is chaotic and there's moving targets anyway, as long as you are anchored to your values and you have a solid base of where you are to step from, it's always a positive step. The straight line is the longest distance. So you actually want that kind of spiral adaptive motion. Oh. Well, I'm going to check out in Kansas in order just to give you guys a chance to talk. I've been such a microphone hog. Oh, I know what we're supposed to do. The word for the week. I was reading Chun Lung's mind there. Okay, so listen to the tones, pick your word, and that'll act as our checkout. Ready? All right, Ernie, word.
Anticipating.
Chun Lung.
Giddy up from the sun. The new words I learned. Giddy up.
Tom Sullivan.
Commit.
Sunal.
A choice of three. I'll say whale.
I was wondering if you were going to remember.
That was one of them.
Jeff.
Remember, forget, whale.
Right. Execute.
Kyun.
The Kaizen.
Tom Hardison.
Base.
Mine was drum and bass. You got to hyphenate that. It's the genre. And also, just go listen to Canon Rock by Jerry C. The link's in chat. There are tens of thousands of redos of that thing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting on that one is the very first comment on that link to Jerry C. is by a kid named Fun2, Funtwo, who also has a legendary version when he was 16 of that of the Jerry C. rendition of Paco Bell.
Wow.
He was so Fun2 was so legendary that he got invited to go play that with Joe Satriani on stage. And it is the most joyful partnership on stage that you ever saw, where Satriani makes room for Fun2 to play.
Yeah.
It is absolutely pure joy. When I need to get optimistic, I watch Fun2 playing Canon Rock with Joe Satriani. Once you start down that trail, you're going to end up watching 1,000 different versions of that thing. It is so good. Anyway,
I'll check it out.
I'm going to check out and get ready for Spain, Germany. You guys be good, and we'll get this posted. There's extensive notes in the follow-up, episode on this one, where this video. And I didn't realize they hadn't posted the U.S. Session from last week. That's up now, and this one will be up shortly. So take good care, and we'll catch you guys later.
Cheers,
Okay.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you all.
See you.
Bye. Hey, I put
Bye.
something in chat for you, so now.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and just one thing for you.
Bye-bye.
Kudos. I noticed in the Tortoise Campfire that he's disappeared, he's still there, that you're
Absolutely.
hosting. So
Yes.
well done.
Thank you. I
Top
have to.
guys.
Just
No,
yeah,
it's
just
amazing.
really
Well done.
thank you. Yeah, thanks. Cool.
That's a big step. That
It
is
is.
a big step, as Sunal will tell you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I
Thanks
haven't
very
made
much.
it there yet.
Doing the work.
Way
Yeah,
to go.
man.
Way to go. I'm going to get there.
Way to go, Kuhn.
Just do it, man. Just do it and see what happens. And I'm like, so nervous beforehand. I don't know what's gonna happen. But I gotta post it because that's the only way to learn. And I really learned a lot, what from the feedback that Ken just gives, and you see different things. You just got to overcome that fear, of man, when is the right? It's never the right time. I can post some nonsense that's really bad trade, and I'm sure I'll get learnings out of it. So, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
You're motivating me.
Yep.
Way to go,
It's
John.
Come on,
great.
Tom.
to
This
go.
week, this is the week.
In fact,
This is the week.
if you want some inspiration, go take a look at Sonal's postings from a couple years ago. She went through a series of just hammering out the most beautiful artwork, and I could just see her locking in all those lessons. And after about 500 of them, she'd done enough to say, "All right, that's enough of that stuff."
Yeah, I was
There's
believing Catherine.
there's no substitute for doing that work, but there's a certain amount of that you need to do, and once you get it, you sort of got it, and you don't have to keep carrying that load. When it becomes oppressive, then it's time to appreciate what that's telling you. Hey, it means that there's other things I should be bringing the same level of effort to in other areas. Ken Hum has sort of found the natural rhythm for him on the weekend postings of a dozen swing trades. He's found a way to efficiently produce those, and so it's not tedious to him. He's found a simple way to get that done. And so that's sort of the next leg up, is how do we produce our internal artifacts for management low cost. And he's sort of, and if you're a swing trader, you need to be listening to those Saturday night podcasts. They're like 20 or 30 minutes. They are gold. So anyway, hey, we'll catch you guys later. Take good care.
Have a good week, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Yeah.